She stopped wanting him, not suddenly, not dramatically. There was no fight, no betrayal, no moment you could point to and say, "There, that's where it broke." It just faded, like a photograph left too long in the sun. The colors did not disappear all at once. They simply became less and less and less. Until one day, she looked at him across the dinner table and felt nothing she could name, and he had no idea. He thought everything was fine. If you are watching this, something in that sentence landed somewhere inside you. Maybe you are the man at that table. Maybe you have felt the distance growing and you do not understand why. Or maybe you are someone who loves someone in that situation, watching it happen and not knowing what to say. Either way, stay with me. Because what I am about to share with you is not a list of tips. It is not advice from a self-help book. It is something deeper, something most people spend years trying to figure out, or never figure out at all. My name is Miss Alice, and I study what happens to love after it is supposed to be safe. Let me tell you about a couple. We will call them Daniel and Sarah. They met in their late 20s. He was attentive, curious, slightly nervous around her in the best possible way. She found that nervousness beautiful. It meant she mattered. They dated for 2 years, got married, moved into a home with a garden she planted herself, and for a while, it was good, really good. But somewhere around year 3, something shifted. Sarah started going to bed earlier. She stopped laughing as loudly. She became not cold. That is the wrong word. She became quiet. Not the comfortable quiet of two people at peace. The other kind, the kind that has weight. Daniel noticed. Of course he noticed. But when he asked if she was okay, she said yes. When he tried to initiate closeness, she would comply. But something was missing. A presence, a willingness. He could feel it, but he could not name it. So he did what a lot of men do. He tried harder in the ways he already knew. He bought flowers. He planned a trip. He told her she was beautiful more often, and none of it worked, because none of it was the thing she actually needed. And he did not know what that thing was, and here is the painful truth. Neither did she. Not in words, anyway. This is where I want to slow down, because what happened between Daniel and Sarah is not unusual. It is, in fact, one of the most common invisible tragedies inside modern marriage. And the reason it keeps happening, generation after generation, couple after couple, is because most men have been taught a fundamentally incomplete map of what intimacy actually is. Not because they are bad, not because they do not care, but because no one ever showed them the full picture. The first thing most men misunderstand is this: intimacy is not a destination, it is a climate. Think about that for a moment. A destination is somewhere you arrive. You plan for it, you work toward it, and once you are there, you are there. A lot of men approach intimacy like a destination. They think, if I do the right things at the right times, we will arrive at closeness, and the arrival will last. But intimacy does not work that way. It works more like weather. It is something that is constantly being created or constantly eroding, based on hundreds of small moments that most people never consciously register. Every conversation that was brushed aside, every time she shared something vulnerable and he changed the subject, every moment she reached for emotional connection and got a practical solution instead. These are not dramatic events. They do not feel like anything significant in the moment, but they are the weather. And over months, over years, they create a climate. And in Daniel and Sarah's home, the climate had slowly, quietly become one in which Sarah no longer felt it was safe or worth it to be fully present. And here is what makes this so difficult. He was not doing anything wrong by the metrics he had been given. He was providing, he was faithful, he was kind in the ways he understood kindness. But there is a kind of emotional absence that can exist inside perfect behavior. And women, not all women, but many, feel that absence acutely. It registers in the body before it registers in the mind. The second misunderstanding is about desire itself. Most men believe, and this is deeply cultural, deeply wired in, that desire in a woman works the way it works in them, that it is spontaneous, that it appears on its own, independent of context, and simply needs an invitation. But for most women, desire is not spontaneous. It is responsive. It emerges from a feeling of safety, of being seen, of emotional warmth that has been building, not for 5 minutes before bed, but across the entire day, across the entire week. Sarah did not stop wanting closeness. She stopped being in a state where closeness felt possible. And the harder Daniel tried to access that closeness without addressing the underlying climate, the more she retreated, not because she did not love him, but because the approach itself told her something she did not want to confirm, that he was focused on the outcome, not on her. There is a profound difference between a man who reaches for his wife because he wants to feel connected to her, and a man who reaches for his wife because he wants something from her. She can feel that difference, even if she cannot articulate it, even if she does not want to acknowledge it. The body knows. The third misunderstanding is about emotional labor. This one is harder to hear, but I want you to stay with it. In most marriages, not all, but most, there is an invisible asymmetry. One partner carries a disproportionate amount of what researchers call cognitive and emotional load. The remembering, the anticipating, the noticing, the managing of the relational temperature of the household, who needs to be called, what the children are feeling, whether the relationship needs attention, whether something is quietly wrong. In most heterosexual marriages, this load falls predominantly on the woman. And here is what happens to a person who carries that weight for years without acknowledgement. They become tired in a way that sleep does not fix. They begin to feel invisible, not unloved necessarily, but unseen. And when a person feels unseen long enough, something in them begins to close. It is not a decision, it is a protection, a slow withdrawal of the most vulnerable parts of themselves from a space that does not seem to register their presence fully. Daniel never saw this, not because he was selfish, but because the labor Sarah performed was largely invisible, even to Sarah herself. She did not have a word for it. She just knew she was tired. She just knew that when he asked what is wrong, and she said nothing, she partly meant, I do not have the energy to explain something this big to someone who has not noticed it yet. Now I want you to stay with me here, because this is where most videos lose the plot. They either slide into blame, the man is the villain, or they slide into reassurance, it is no one's fault, it is just communication. And neither of those is the truth. The truth is this: most men are not failing their wives out of selfishness. They are failing them out of a specific learned blindness, a blindness that was taught to them by fathers who did not know how to name feelings, by a culture that told them strength meant silence, by the absence of models that showed them what emotional attunement actually looks like in practice. And that blindness has consequences, real ones. Not because women are fragile, but because connection, real, sustainable, intimate connection, requires a kind of seeing that has to be actively learned by anyone who was not taught it young. The fourth thing, this one is quiet, but it may be the most important. Most men do not understand the relationship between conflict and intimacy. Specifically, they do not understand the damage of unresolved emotional residue. When two people argue, or when one person feels hurt and the hurt is never fully acknowledged, something remains, a trace, an unfinished thread. And that thread does not disappear just because time passes or the topic changes. It accumulates. It builds a kind of scar tissue in the relationship, not dramatic, not visible, but felt. Sarah had a list of moments she had never spoken aloud, moments when she felt dismissed, moments when she felt that her feelings were an inconvenience, moments when she brought something important and it was minimized or fixed instead of heard. She did not hold these moments against Daniel consciously. She was not building a case, but her nervous system had filed every single one of them, and intimacy requires a nervous system that feels safe. Hers did not fully, not anymore. And Daniel, who had long forgotten those individual moments, could not understand the cumulative weight of them, because for him, each moment was resolved when it ended. For her, it never fully ended. It simply went quiet. Fifth, the performance of presence. There is a difference between being in the room and being present. Most men have learned to perform presence, to sit in the same space, to nod, to respond, but their attention is elsewhere, on the phone, on the game, on the problem they are solving in their mind. And a woman who loves someone becomes, over time, a very accurate reader of where that person's attention actually is. She stops bringing things to the conversation when she knows, not consciously but somewhere deeper, that she will not be fully received. She stops being curious aloud. She stops sharing the small, strange, alive parts of herself because those parts require an audience that is actually present, and slowly the parts of her that were most magnetic, most vivid, begin to live only inside her, where it is safe. And then he wonders why she seems so far away. She is far away, but she went there because the nearness stopped feeling like nearness. The sixth misunderstanding is perhaps the most painful because it involves the thing men often believe is the solution. When intimacy fades, many men respond by increasing physical pursuit, more affection, more initiation, more visible desire. And from his perspective, this should be reassuring. It says, I want you. I find you desirable. I am still here. But to a woman who has been feeling emotionally unseen, increased physical pursuit in the absence of emotional repair does not feel like desire. It feels like pressure. It feels like confirmation that what he wants is the outcome, not her. And every time she feels that pressure, she retreats a little further, and every time she retreats, he pursues more. And the cycle tightens. Neither of them wants this. Both of them are trying, in the only ways they know how. But they are speaking completely different languages of need, and no one ever taught either of them that the other's language existed. There is a moment in the story of Daniel and Sarah that I keep coming back to. One evening, this was after 2 years of slow distance, Sarah was sitting on the back steps of their house in the garden she had planted, and she was crying, quietly, not dramatically, just sitting in the dark and letting herself feel how lonely she was inside a life that looked whole from the outside. And Daniel walked out, saw her, and sat down beside her. And for once he said nothing. He did not ask what was wrong. He did not try to fix it. He did not check his phone. He just sat with her in the dark. And after a while, he took her hand. Not as an invitation, not as a prelude, just as a way of saying, I am here. Whatever this is, I am here. Sarah told me later that in that one silent moment, she felt more intimacy than she had in 2 years. Not because the problems were solved, not because anything changed, but because for the first time in longer than she could remember, he was fully present, not doing, not fixing, not wanting, just there. That is the thing most men are never taught, that sometimes the most intimate act is not action at all. It is stillness. It is attention without agenda. It is the willingness to be in someone's pain without trying to end it quickly so you can feel better. So what actually changes things? Not grand gestures, not perfect communication strategies learned from a self-help framework. What changes things is a slow, patient recalibration of what presence means. It is learning to notice, really notice, the small moments that build or erode the climate. It is developing the habit of emotional curiosity, not what is wrong as a box to check, but genuine interest in the interior life of the person you chose. It is understanding that your partner's withdrawal is not rejection. It is information. It is her nervous system communicating what words have not been able to, and it deserves curiosity, not defense. It is the willingness to sit in discomfort without resolving it too quickly, to let her feelings be real without making them about you, to apologize not just for actions but for impacts, even the ones you did not intend. And perhaps most importantly, it is the practice of showing up in the ordinary moments, not the anniversary dinner, not the trip, the Tuesday evening when nothing is happening, and she makes a small comment about her day, and you put everything down, everything, and you actually listen, and then you ask one more question, just one, because you are genuinely interested in her answer. That is intimacy. That is the climate. That is how it is built, slowly, one invisible moment at a time. If Daniel and Sarah's story lived anywhere inside you tonight, I want you to sit with that, not with guilt, not with blame directed at yourself or someone else, but with honesty. Because the most courageous thing a person can do in a relationship that has grown quiet is to stop explaining the distance and start being curious about it. To ask, with genuine openness, without defense, what it has felt like to be the person across from you, and then to listen, really listen, without preparing your response, without defending your intentions, without ending the silence too soon. The intimacy is not gone. In most cases, it has simply gone somewhere safe, waiting to see if it is worth coming back. Show it that it is. And if this landed somewhere real for you today, share it with someone who needs to hear it, not as an accusation, as an invitation. That is where all of this begins.